But we begin tonight across the pond as the world mourns the death of Queen Elizabeth. Today, for the first time, we heard from the new King of England, Charles III, address the nation, paying tribute to his mother and ushering in a new era.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love.
Earlier in the day, the new monarch was greeted at Buckingham Palace by a crowd gathered to pay their respects, with cheers and cries of a phrase most Brits aren't used to saying: God save the King. Gun salutes took place in Hyde Park and at the Tower of London. 96 rounds were fired, one for each year of Elizabeth's life, while church bells at St. Paul's Cathedral in Westminster Abbey rang out at noon. The next 10 days of mourning will consist of elaborate plans to honor the Queen in accordance with tradition. Changes will be made to the country's postage and currency. Charles's ascension to the throne comes at a tumultuous time for England politically and economically, with the country facing spiraling energy costs and inflation, Russia's war in Ukraine, and the aftermath of the country's exit from the European Union. Not to mention, the new king has enormous shoes to fill. The theme of Charles' life has essentially been that he is forever overshadowed. First by the Queen, who dazzled not only Great Britain, but here in America with her endearing yet resolute demeanor. Then by Princess Diana, the people's princess, who was universally beloved and transformed the way the public viewed the British monarchy. Now he faces the daunting task of emerging as his own man at the age of 73. It's a moment he's been waiting for literally his entire life. But the question that remains to be seen is, what kind of monarch will he be? Joining me now is NBC senior international correspondent Keir Simmons at Buckingham Palace in London, Tim Ewart, MSNBC royal commentator, and Michelle Tauber, editorial director and senior editor overseeing royals coverage at People. Thank you all for being here. Keir, I'm going to start with you. Your coverage has been exceptional, so I've been coveting every other show that's had you on, so I'm grateful that you're here. But let me just ask you, we saw those images of Charles greeting the public today and sort of, finally kind of sort of stepping into his own. But we still have another, 10 days of mourning for the Queen. And it struck me as I was watching those scenes that he remains, in a sense, in her shadow. To what extent on the ground are people turning their attention toward him?
Well, you have to pinch yourself, don't you? We certainly felt that way when we saw him outside Buckingham Palace there, that you are not looking at Prince Charles, the man that you have seen for decades. You're looking at King Charles. It still hasn't really sunk in. He's been waiting for this role for so long, and now it all seems to be happening so fast. I think in that moment, you saw the public figure doing his duty, doing his public determined to do his duty. And then you saw the private man at the same time, because he went to see the flowers, a person who is grieving. And when he went inside Buckingham Palace there, Joy, and that was the first time that a new monarch had walked into Buckingham Palace for 70 years and recorded that televised message, you really saw how he felt about his mum in that messaging. But as we've said before, when it comes to royals, there is such a mix of different aspects to this. So at the time that he is privately grieving, he's also very much got his eye on the politics, because you better believe that the folks in that building behind me there are political. And the political message really of him stepping out of that car today there and stepping into history and then walking over to greet people was to say, I want to be a king for the people. I want to connect with the people. I don't want you to think that I am a distant king. And he knows how important that is. His mom managed to achieve it, and that's what he wants. He wants to follow in her footsteps, not just in terms of being the one who is stable, the one who is a rock the way that she was, and the one who brings small amounts of change that people can handle, if you like. It's a very conservative institution, the royal family. But also, I think, just ensuring that he has the consent of the people, because in the end, that is what royalty is built on.
And it's interesting. Michelle Tauber, welcome to the show. And in his message, you talked about wherever you live, you know, in the world, et cetera, and sort of trying to bring in everyone, right? And sort of bring people in. But he is different in a sense, right? I mean, he's got to follow his former wife, Princess Diana, who did just what Keir is talking about and did it really brilliantly and really made the monarchy seem accessible, particularly to Americans. And so I wonder how American audiences are perceiving this man who in many ways was the villain in that story, he and his now queen consort.
Absolutely. He has had a real arc, quite a dramatic arc, particularly in the eyes of Americans who, as you say, very much remember him from these scandal years with Diana and remain really devoted to Diana and to what she stood for. And we know how overshadowed he felt by Diana during those years. And I think in that speech, and as well as when you saw him meeting the public, you really saw the effort to connect, and you heard many more personal notes in that speech than we usually do from a monarch, including calling Camilla his darling wife and saying, officially naming her his queen consort, and expressing his love for his son Harry and his wife Meghan, and also officially naming Prince William as Prince of Wales and Princess Kate as Princess of Wales. So those were some very personal touches and very intentional.
And Tim, thank you and welcome to the show as well. Talk a little bit about that because, King Charles III is presiding over a very different royal family. And he is a liberal in the small L sense of the word, in the sense that he did push forward and say, I'm going to marry the woman I would like to marry, and we're going to have her be queen. There's not going to be any controversy about that. We're going to do that. And he is presiding over this set of younger royals, his heir, who's a more traditional royal, but also Harry and Meghan, who, have had some trauma from the British press. And so embracing all of that, the sort of multicultural, multiracial family, how do you think he ends up managing all of that and not getting overshadowed by them?
With a lot of difficulty, Joy. This is and has been for a long time, a divided family. There's been a lot of personal troubles in the royal family, as we all know. We've talked about the Diana years and so forth. When Charles talked tonight and made a reference to Harry and Meghan, he was extending a really public olive branch to them, expression of his own personal love, because he's been deeply distressed by their departure, the way that they've been talking about the royal family, the criticisms of the royal family. Now, whether or not what he said today will heal the rift, whether or not over the next few days, as we await the Queen's funeral and William and Harry are living in Windsor almost side by side, whether they will actually talk to each other, whether this rift will be healed, we just don't know. But my sense is if there is ever a time for it to happen, if there is ever a time for this family to get together and bury the hatchet, if you like, it's now. And I'm sure that that's going to be a big priority for the new king. And it's important for him, too, to win over the public, because we have a skeptical public in this country. He's not the most popular royal figure. He's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I mean, not the most popular by far. I mean, there are polls that show that he's the least popular royal figure. 11% of those surveyed in the New York Times has a story that 11% of those surveyed have a favorable view of him, trailing the Queen, William and his wife, Kate, Harry, and Meghan, Princess Anne, Prince Philip, and any of the Queen's great-grandchildren. He has a lot to deal with, Keir. I mean, in addition to the Prince Andrew business, which his mom really, really kept the lid on. But it feels like the things that she was able to cover over with her own grace and her own popularity, he now has to confront them all, including the Harry and Meghan situation, including whether that rift happens, including this funeral. I mean, another network was literally suggesting, in all seriousness, that perhaps President Biden might invite Donald Trump, who might be indicted soon for stealing classified documents, to go with him, because the president gets to invite people to go with him. There's so much that has to be navigated. That would be incredibly awkward, I'm sure. So does he show signs, Charles, of being somebody that's got this sort of aplomb that his mother did to handle all of this?
Well, when you talk about the international politics side, and that's what it is when it comes to US presidents, of course, I mean, they're past masters at this in there. That's not really the difficult part. The hard part really is, as Tim was suggesting, and he has such long experience with looking at the royal family and being around the royal family. You know, when you're looking at those issues within the family, that's where it gets really difficult. And, you know, Joy, I know so many folks watching your show love politics, and the politics of the royal family really is politics distilled down, because they don't have any power. All they have is their messaging. And just think about that moment that happened here outside Buckingham Palace for the Queen's Jubilee, when little Prince Louis came and bounced on Charles's lap. And what you saw there was a very personal moment. There's no question that was a grandfather enjoying his grandson, but it also sent a message that was useful for Prince Charles, just the same as the message that he was trying to send when he came to greet the crowds here. And that's what being a royal is about. The personal, the political, the public and the private are intermixed. These are people who live in the goldfish bowl. Charles has lived in that goldfish bowl all his life. He knows how to navigate it, but the trouble is that in the end, as I mentioned, public opinion is everything. They depend on public opinion, just as royals have for hundreds of years, and that is where the challenge is, as Tim was suggesting.